I have been a pretty big fan of the ATC style genre games for a little while now. Started probably about 10 plus years ago when I played the original Tower game. I don't know if it's really by the same company as this particular game. That game had three airports. Two were kind of photorealistic, and one was kind of a made up airport that allowed you to zoom in and view the airplanes in a different way. It was pretty fun. About 10 years after that, I got the itch to play that style of game again, but I couldn't find it. So I searched around online and found that there was a good game called ATC Simulator 2. That game is a very intense simulator that some schools who train people for the profession of ATC actually utilize for some of their training. That one's more based on centers, which are what hand off airplanes between airports and larger transitional flights or transatlantic flights. So they're all over the U.S. So you have an airplane that takes off at one airport. When it leaves the airport airspace, it gets handed off to the center, and then the center controls it through its airspace to the next airport, and so on and so forth. So that game was pretty realistic. It even required a background check before you could buy it because it contained enough realistic flight data that they wanted to make sure everything was okay on you before they allowed you to buy it. That game was a lot of fun. It wasn't very forgiving, and it was really difficult, but again, it was a lot of fun. The main reason I didn't stick with that one for a whole long time, or for a whole lot of time, was because of the fact that voice recognition was pretty crappy on it. It was very hard to get voice to work. So it made it a little less fun to have to sit there and hand type all of the different call signs and commands and things like that in this day and age. So I was perusing Steam and YouTube the other night when I came across this game, Tower 3D Pro. Now, there's two versions. Tower 3D, which is the same game, just no voice support. It's $30. And then the Pro version adds in voice support through Windows Voice. It's not in-game. It's through Windows Voice Recognition, and it's $50. It's not too bad. The overall interface is very simplistic, so let's take a quick look over the actual interface and what you've got to look at. So on the left side, when you get in, it starts with airport selection. You can see it has Atlanta International as DLC. You can see here on the banner, it's showing that it's now available to purchase. If you drop it down, you can see I can get JFK and San Diego as well. Those are all three DLC. And that brings me to the first bug that I noticed. This is the third time I've ever played the game, and I've run into an issue where quite often the DLC window here sticks on top of it instead of switching to the actual runways that come with the game. So you have St. Thomas, LAX, and Philadelphia as the three runways three airports that come with the game. And the first time I loaded the game, I couldn't get rid of the banner for the DLC for Atlanta. So every time I'd select one of the runways I had, it would pull up behind this banner, and I couldn't actually play because you have to actually select which runway you expect incoming traffic on. So it took about 2 reloads before it fixed, and then I was able to play. Not the end of the world, but kind of an annoying bug, especially when they're pimping their DLC. Next option, you have your traffic density. You can set 50% to 100%, and it's based off of more realistic time patterns and traffic flow in and out of the airport. So at St. Thomas here, 50% density, expect a very slow shift. 100%, you may have a few moments of pretty steady activity, but beyond that, it's going to be pretty boring because it's a small airport. If you're new to this style of gaming, then definitely hit up St. Thomas. Use only one runway for arrivals and learn how to play the game. There's a lot going on and a lot you need to pay attention to, as you'll see here in a minute. Forecast, you can set it to random. I've only thus far played on clear because I'm still, again, this is the third time I've played the game, so I'm just trying to get used to it. And I've set my time as 7 a.m. Usually it starts about 5 minutes before that, and then you move on through there. Now I picked 7 a.m. because I wanted to get the morning departure rush, and then at about 8 to 8:30 a.m. is when you start getting the first arrivals from other airports coming in, so you kind of get to experience both of the morning rushes, so it's kind of fun. Another awesome feature that this game has is it does allow for multiplayer. Now, unfortunately, none of my friends actually like this type of a game, so I won't be able to test that out myself, but I have seen it online, and it's pretty fun. You get to select between either tower or ground. The difference is the tower controller will handle all airplanes once they're off the ground and getting them onto the ground. Once they hit the ground, they switch over to the ground controller, who will move them around the airport and get them to the actual gates. So depending on how you configure the game, it could be very boring for one of these two people, but you need to really step it up and make it fun by selecting multiple arrival runways. You can even have airplanes coming in on both directions from the runways, and the air controller will have to maneuver them around the airport and get them all lined up. So it can be pretty hectic. Next menus are the settings. Not a whole lot to select here. You've got pretty much every resolution option configurable up to the native of your monitor and then up to the display. I've got triple display, so it's recognizing my full-on display. Game doesn't scale very well with that, which is disappointing. I was really hoping I could get some triple screen action and put my left monitor with full radar, my right monitor with full ground, and my middle monitor actually showing me the planes. To me, that would be perfect, but I'll probably tinker with that later. Next, you've got your speech recognition. I keep setting this to random. It seems to want me to reset this every time. That's fine. I don't really care about gender or tone. I'd rather that be random. Speed, I recommend keeping it on normal. Any slower and it sounds a little ridiculous, and any faster and you're never going to understand them. Now, it is more realistic to have it faster, but again, we're talking about a computer voice, which is the downside to this. It's not a person who spoke into a computer and the computer's assembling different sayings to create the right voice. It's all computer-based, so it sounds like this.
Good day.
But that's okay. When we get in the game, you're not as focused on that, you're just focused on the actual process of it. Now volume, you heard that's pretty quiet, and I've got speech volume maxed out. Once it's maxed out, you're going to hear it, but it's not always going to be the greatest. Sound effects and environment volume, I definitely recommend dropping that down. Main reason being is it's going to sound a bit ridiculous with environment, because you're in the tower and the environment has birds. I really shouldn't be hearing that many birds at an airport inside the tower. It's going to be a little funky. Road noise, that's one thing. Yeah, you'll probably hear some cars depending on the airport, and that's fine. Sound effects will be your airplanes and your ground crews, which is fine to hear. But if you have these at all above kind of where I've got them here or anywhere near the halfway mark, they're going to greatly overpower everything else that's going on in the game. So that's one thing I don't like. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot you can go in and tweak. Advanced settings aren't very difficult. I've got everything kind of maxed out. The game really doesn't require that much. Statistics gives you kind of an idea of how you've been performing and what's going on. Now, the reason I'm looking rather pathetic here with my collected penalties is I had some issues in my second game with voice recognition when an airliner decided it wanted to drive onto the runway and turn at a plane that I gave takeoff clearance to. Unfortunately, I had to delete that plane to avoid a crash, but that was just the unfortunate thing. And then I've had a few other random quirks with voice recognition, and then one or two nitpicky things where I had a plane that was literally almost pulled off the runway, and I gave another plane clearance to take off on that same runway. Neither plane was ever even near the runway at the same time the other one was on the runway, so it just vindicated. And I know those are the actual ATC and FAA rules, and that's fine. It's just a game. So the points here really don't mean anything, but so far I've only had 44 takeoffs, 27 landings, and I've controlled 5 hours and 34 minutes. Some of that was at a high speed setting to get some action going on. So last option up here, you've got some in-game music, which is ridiculously loud as well, but it's pretty music. I have it turned off just because it's way too loud, and especially for the point of making a video, you'll never hear me, and I'll have to tweak all the audio in post. So basic settings, not a lot going on. Let's get configured for what I'm going to do tonight. So right now I'm going to have 9 left and 3-5 as my arrival runways. I'm going to be here at the tower, and we're going to jump in and see a lot of the cool stuff that you can do with this. Yesterday I played at 50% density. I only had one moment where I got a little busy, so I'm going to jump this straight up to 75% and see if we can get some pretty hectic activity going on. And we'll jump into the game and look at the in-game menus in the next video. Thank you.